I remember when I was in elementary school, there was a big scare about people in red and black robes living in the mountains. They were supposedly mutilating cows and other livestock in their dark rituals. Now, as a teen, I didn't take these allegations seriously, and I thought if there were worshippers doing that sort of stuff, they were doing it for show. Not because they believed it would give them magical powers, but just to scare the locals. I personally knew some of the guys who were just mean enough to do it too. I avoided these people, as did most everybody else. They were the kind of people who would kick stray dogs just to hear them yelp and watch them run away in fear. I kind of always hoped Tony, the leader, would kick the wrong dog one day and it would take his foot right off up to his hip. Hell, I couldn't stand those guys. There were 5 of them, and they all had juvenile records long enough to stretch from here to the moon. Tony was the worst, though. He was violent. The other 4 just kind of fell in line, doing whatever he said. They thought he was cool. The news reports of foul rituals and animal mutilations stopped as I started my junior year of school. We all thought it was over and done. Then, during the summer between junior and senior year, I was riding the bus home looking out the window and I saw a dead animal. Actually, it was half of a dead animal. The top half. The bus driver gave me a dark look as he stopped at my driveway and told me to go on home, not to be out rambling around, that he was going to report what he knew we had both seen. He also warned me not to stir up the others on the bus or the neighborhood. My driveway was only about 300 feet from that animal, and I pretended to walk toward home as the bus pulled away. But as soon as it was out of sight, I ditched my books by a tree and hauled ass to the animal. I had to see it up close to verify that I had really seen what I thought I had seen. And I had. And it was sickening. It was a dog, and it had been cut cleanly in half, as if by a laser or something. There were no blood, the guts hadn't leaked out, but seemed to have been removed, leaving only the cavity between its ribs. The back end of the dog lay down an embankment, but I wasn't about to go investigate that. As far as I was concerned, my little adventure had ended. I cut through a tobacco field, grabbed my books, and jogged home, still feeling sick to my stomach. The next day, the news was all over the school. I wouldn't participate in any discussions about it, though. I had seen it up close, and it wasn't something that I wanted to talk about. The local news carried a very short segment about it, said the police didn't have any leads yet. Now, the haughty way Tony and his group strutted around for the next week, well, I was sure it had been them. I didn't know how they had done it, but I was sure they had. They were sick people, freaks. The following week, someone found a goat nailed to a tree with all of its organs missing. Again, there was no blood. Again, I thought it had to have been Tony and his minions. I had to wonder how long it would be before they found a person like that. The old stories resurfaced about devil worshippers. Churches held prayer meetings to combat the forces of evil they thought were invading their placid little community. Parents kept their kids and pets close. And when the sheep was found in the center of a huge pentagram scratched into the ground at the park, everyone lost their shit. It was like the Salem witch trials around here, minus the burning at the stakes. Friends accused each other's kids of the acts. Preachers named suspects from the pulpits, most of them lifelong avoiders of the church or well-known petty criminals. The sheriff's department visited the schools and handed out flyers to the kids with the phone number of the sheriff's office on them, asking for anonymous tips. It was a crazy few months for everyone here. That killing was different, though. There was blood. Lots of it. All from that poor animal scattered around the pentagram. There were candles left burning at each point of the star, too. I seemed to be the only one who thought that, just maybe, that the killing had been done by a different person. I thought Tony wouldn't have changed his MO. If he had found a way to leave bloodless corpses, he would have stuck to it because it was way creepier. The farmers started posting guards at their barns overnight, and the tales of all sorts of fanciful beasts and supernatural happenings came into play. With every new animal killing, I suspected Tony and his group, but I never voiced this aloud for fear of retaliation. I didn't want to be the first human the police found hanging from a tree or in a ditch cut in half. So one day at lunch, I went outside and sat under the bleachers away from everybody. I was sick of hearing about the latest suspects and why they had to be the ones killing animals all over the county. Tony and his little group ended up sitting right above me. I wanted to get away from them, but I didn't dare move. If they saw me, I would be a potential victim of their bullying. Tony told them all to shut up and asked which one of them was doing the killings without his say-so. They all denied it. One of them said that they thought Tony had been doing it. "Oh yeah, like I go out and do anything without you assholes. The sheep in Rock Creek Park is the only one I've done, and you were all there with me. Now fess up. I want to know how you're draining all that blood and making those clean cuts." He grabbed one guy by the shirt and hauled him close. "Are you using some of your daddy's sawmill tools?" The boy shook his head. Tony thrust him backward, and the guy went sprawling across the benches. "What about you, Hurley? Using some of your mom's whack mortician tools?" "She don't work at the funeral home no more, Tony. You know that." Soon, Tony had gone through everyone in the group, and none confessed to knowing anything about the killings. Only the sheep. Tony had told them to plan on a Halloween gathering at another park. He said if there was a devil afoot in the county, he planned on conjuring him on Halloween night. They would sacrifice something special that night. He told them in a low, menacing voice. I curled up tighter into the shadow of the bleachers as they thundered down them, laughing as the bell rang to signal the end of lunch. I knew I should tell someone, but I didn't know who to tell. If it got back to Tony that it came from me, I would be in for it. I had 2 weeks to figure out what to do about what I had heard. I was dumbfounded at learning the bloodless killings had not been Tony's doing. I was not shocked to find out that he had killed the sheep, though. Late one night, as I fell asleep, a plan came to me. If Tony wanted to conjure the devil, maybe I could help him out. It came to me as a fully formed idea, and I laughed. I didn't sleep that night. I was far too excited about my plan. The next day, I ditched school and caught a bus. I rode to the edge of Unicoi, and then walked 3 miles to my Uncle Dan's house in Johnson City. He was a sculptor and artist who specialized in Halloween masks and decorations, which he sold online. He made a small fortune selling that dark shit to people all over the world. Personally, that stuff creeped me out, gave me nightmares. It was all too real looking. I told him what I wanted, and he laughed, saying he was glad I had finally grown out of my fears. He agreed to make me the most realistic devil mask and costume ever made by human hands. He told me to come back in a week and pick it up. I told him to keep it a secret, that I wanted to surprise Mom and Dad with it. Now, of course, he agreed. He loved pranks and practical jokes. A week later, I ditched school again and went to pick up my costume. Dan answered the door in the getup and scared the hell out of me. He looked like a charred demon straight out of the fiery abyss. The bodysuit was like putting on a diver's suit, but the face was where the real work came in. He showed me how to put on the prosthetics, so that the mask moved with my face, and it looked really natural. Afterward, he loaded the costume and me into his truck and took me home. He distracted my parents while I sneaked through the back door, and I hid the devil outfit under my bed. The next day was Friday. It was Halloween. At the right time, I came sauntering through the front door and acted surprised to see Dan. The ruse had gone off without a hitch. I couldn't sleep that night either, as I thought about how I would approach Tony and the group, scare the daylights out of them, and maybe even scare them straight. If I scared them bad enough, they might think twice before killing another animal, or bullying another kid at school. Hey, I was a teenager, maybe a bit naive, but I hoped for the best. Friday, as I went through classes, it was hard to concentrate and even harder to keep the grin off of my face. I avoided Tony as always. In the locker room after gym, he told the guys to be at Limestone Cove Park at sunset. That was all the reassurance I needed. The big brawny idiot was really going to try to conjure the devil. That evening, I told my parents I was going to my friend's house to watch scary movies and spend the night. My mom insisted on driving me. I rolled the costume and accessories into a blanket and rode nervously all the way to Tim's house. Tim, he thought I was a psycho, but he agreed to cover for me. He lived close to the park and would join me if his mother went to her sister's house to drink for the night, which she usually did every Friday night. He helped me with the mask and gave me a flashlight as I sneaked out the back door. I hadn't planned on the trek through the woods to be so scary. By the time I saw the glow of Tony's fire, I had sweated inside the suit so badly that it shifted on me. The latex slid against my skin sickeningly. I hoped the separate pieces glued to my face would hold long enough for me to do what I had to come to do. The black grease paint wouldn't come off, but if the chin and cheeks shifted, they could fall off right in the middle of my plan and ruin everything. I heard a girl's voice as I turned off the flashlight and eased through the darkness through the firelight. She sounded annoyed. It was Tony's emo girlfriend. He was telling her it had to look real, but that it was all for show. He said that if the Dark Lord thought his intentions were true, he would show himself. A cold chill ran right through me. I peeked through the bushes and saw that the girl was lying on the ground. Her hands were bound to a stake above her head, and her ankles to a stake below her feet. Tony shushed her and put a hand over her mouth. "Shut your gob before you ruin it, Sam." The girl nodded and he removed his hand. He started unbuttoning her shirt, and perverted laughter ran through the guys. Tony quickly shut them up too. He wielded a long, thin blade knife at them, telling them to shut up. They obeyed. Is he really going to hurt Sam? Had he finally graduated from animals to humans? I was terrified and instantly thought how stupid my plan had been. There were no pockets in the costume, so I didn't even have my cell phone. I was in a jam, and the only thing I could do for the moment was watch in horror as he continued unbuttoning her shirt. I had to do something fast. He flipped her shirt open, revealing her bra and her milky white torso. He ran a finger down the center of her chest, and she shivered. He raised his finger to his lips and placed the tip of the knife just below her bra. He dragged the blade down to her belly button, and she laughed nervously. He started reciting some poem about raising the devil, and near the end of it, just when I was ready to believe he was doing it for show, two of the guys grabbed Sam's hands and feet, pinning her to the dirt. Another put his hand over her mouth, and she began to thrash and fight. Tony's expression changed, and all I saw was bloodlust and crazy in his face. Without thinking, I shambled through the bushes noisily, emerging on the other side to 5 sets of wide, unblinking eyes. Tony still had the blade poised over Sam menacingly, and suddenly, it was too much. I felt as if I were suffocating. Sam had gone still and silent. The guys restraining her let her go and gawked at me stupidly. For one horrible moment, I thought they knew who I was. My heart thundered so hard, I was sure it would just explode in my chest. One guy, Hurley, whose mother was no longer a mortician, bolted into the darkness in the opposite direction without a word. The other three turned to me and knelt, shaking so bad I thought they would fall flat on their faces. I looked at Tony. He was still frozen in place, knife held high, eyes wide and face unmoving. I knew I couldn't speak or it'd all fall apart. I don't think the devil would sound like a teenage boy going through puberty. Then again, he might. Who knows? I raised one arm and motioned for him to put the knife down, and somehow I managed to grin. He tossed the knife into the bushes and held his hands up. I nodded and motioned for him to unbind Sam. She scurried closer to me and collapsed into some weird prostration pose, as I looked at the bowed heads and shaking bodies. I wondered what the hell I was supposed to do then. I backed away a few steps. The only thing for me to do was run and hope that they were so shocked they couldn't catch up to me. I turned toward the bushes and tried to remember exactly where I had dropped the flashlight. Just as I took the first step toward it, a sudden and unexpected movement directly in front of me caused me to yelp in shock. I clamped a hand over my mouth as I heard Tony and the group moving behind me. As the robed figure came into view, I stumbled back a couple of steps. The scythe arched over the figure's head and reflected the dancing flames of the fire. The hood was completely empty. Just blackness, and the hand wrapped around the scythe was made of swirling smoke. The world seemed to stop as I watched miniature tendrils of that smoke break away and rise into the air, fading away slowly to nothing. How had someone accomplished that trick? I wondered. The other smoky hand raised in my direction, and a single finger wagged back and forth as if saying, "No, no, no." My heart fell to my knees. Tony was on his feet and the others followed his lead. What the hell's going on here? Who are you two? He shoved the guys out of his way and stormed toward me and the thing in the robe. He reached out to grab the robe and the figure leaned toward him. A loud roar of thunder and wind started in the woods, and a swarm of insects funneled out of the dark hood, covering Tony instantly. His scream was cut off, and he hit the ground. The insects swarmed back into the hood, leaving only a skeleton where Tony had been 10 seconds earlier. The guys ran, leaving Sam screaming like a banshee. I screamed at her to run, and I took off blindly into the woods in the general direction of Tim's house. Now, Sam and Tony were reported missing by their parents a few days later. I went to the sheriff and told him what I had seen. I told him my whole stupid plan while I was at it, too. They never found a single trace of either one of them. Tony's group of minions denied seeing anything, in fact. They denied ever being at the park. The sheriff let me off with a warning, thinking that I had been trying to interfere with the investigation. For months, he and his deputies randomly dropped by to question me about the whereabouts of Tony and Sam. They came to the conclusion that they had run away together. I stopped trying to make the sheriff listen to my story for fear of being put in a mental ward. The animal mutilation stopped after that, thankfully. No one ever found out who was killing the animals. I barely graduated high school, skimming by in my classes with the lowest possible grades. I lived in terror that the thing I had seen would come back. Now that I'm 30 and I haven't seen it again, I just hope I live the rest of my life without it. Was it the devil? The Grim Reaper? A demon? Had that thing been killing the animals? I don't have a clue what it was, or if it was responsible for the killings. And I hope I never find out.